Hey everyone, and welcome to the June 2023 meeting of Triangle Association of Freelancers. We've got a wonderful guest with us this evening, Andy Hollandbeck, the managing editor of the Saturday Evening Post. Andy, thank you for joining us.
Sure, anytime.
I want to talk a lot about your editorial needs and what we can do as writers to help meet those. But before we get into that, I wanted you to tell us a little bit about your professional journey. How you got to where you are today. Tell us a little bit about your background.
Well, I after meeting a lot of working editors now, I find that my background is a little odd because I didn't go to college for even English, especially not editing, because I don't think that existed when I was in college, as a major anyway. So I have a degree in music, but I grew up, my mother was an English teacher, and I grew up being an avid reader. And at least in high school, especially, I was always really good at picking out spelling and grammatical errors. I was that annoying guy who could always say, "Oh no, you don't need that comma there," or "It's there's no G in rain in." I still catch that one, and that sort of thing. But I went to college for music. After that, a few things happened. I ended up working in proofreading at a company that was soon bought by John Wiley and Sons. And so I was at Wiley and Sons for 13 years. Went through proofreading, moved up to copy editing, and then I was on their online team. And so that's basically where I learned editing on the job. I left them because they were always like 6 years behind technologically, and I wanted to get something more advanced. This is like 2013. So after that, I ended up working for a digital marketing company, which was a little odd. And then I worked for an old school advertising agency, which was horrible. Everything you know about good writing does not apply to advertising, so it's soul killing. And then in as I said, in what was the year, 2015, it would have been 2015, that I sold a short story, my first short story, to the Saturday Evening Post for their New Fiction Friday online. And then that was in, I think, March. And then in the late summer of that year, they had a job opening for a copy editor, and I was looking for a better job. And I went in through the interview process and got it. So I started on the first Monday of January 2016 as the new copy editor. About 2 years later, I moved up to the managing editor when our managing editor left. And then just this last summer, after our editorial director retired, we all sort of moved up a little bit. So I've been taking on more roles, dealing more directly with authors like you guys, and just doing a lot more paperwork on top of that too. So
Where's the Post located?
oh, we're in Indianapolis. We're on the northwest side of Indianapolis now.
This magazine has a remarkable history. Can you talk a little bit about its past and what a notable publication it has been for a very, very long time? I seem to recall reading somewhere, and perhaps I'm wrong on this though, that in the very, very beginning there was a bit of a Benjamin Franklin connection. Is that right?
Yeah, I think that started back in the 19th century, and I really think that was more of a marketing ploy. But it's somewhat justifiable, so it still pops up every now and then. So the Saturday Evening Post, the first Saturday Evening Post, was printed in the spring of 1821. So just a few years ago, we celebrated our bicentennial. So it was just a regular broadsheet back then. They didn't have magazines as we know them today. Somewhere along the line, somebody realized that the magazine, the Post, was being printed out of the same printing house, and probably with the same printing press, where Benjamin Franklin had done the Pennsylvania Gazette starting in 1728. So that's the link there. And then they tried to say, this is why I say it's a marketing ploy. They said, we're using his basically his office and his printing press, and we also have the same sort of outlook on what kind of stories we're going to share and how we're going to be unbiased and that sort of thing. So the Benjamin Franklin link has been really kept up, and as the publication got more popular, I think editors really did pay more attention to basically the ideals of Benjamin Franklin about being unbiased and being wholesome and family friendly and that sort of thing. But it's also just a great hook. So yeah, 1821 is when the Post actually started. It wasn't hugely popular. I mean, it lasted for a while. It wasn't countrywide. It was just like an East Coast paper. Toward the end of the 19th century, circulation was really down. It was probably under 1,000 for circulation. So then Cyrus Curtis, who was just a rich guy, he had basically created the Ladies' Home Journal. It was just the Ladies' Journal at the time, as a magazine geared specifically for women. And it was really popular and it did really well. And he thought, well, let's see if we could do this for a men's magazine. So he was looking around. He didn't want to start from scratch. He was looking around for, something he could buy and keep going. And here was the Saturday Evening Post. The name hadn't been registered, so it was still available. And so he ended up buying it, the whole thing, for like $1,000. I mean, granted, that's not super cheap this is the 1890s, but still, it's pretty cheap. So then he redesigned it and he just went with it. It took him a few years to get it under his feet. Now, Cyrus Curtis is the reason that magazines have so many advertisements in them now, because he figured out advertising can pay for the magazine. In fact, in the 20s, later on in the 20s, that they had a problem getting enough content because they didn't want to have page after page of advertising because they had so many advertisers. But by then it was the most popular magazine in the United States. So anyway, Cyrus Curtis took it over. He found an editor named George Horace Lorimer, and Lorimer is the one who really made the Post so popular. They instituted, they're the ones who started the covers, the nice covers that the Post is known for. They had, in fiction, they had a guaranteed 2-week response rate. So if that's why they got all of the great short story writers of the time, because if you send a story into the Post, you get a response in 2 weeks, at least. I mean, at most 2 weeks, I should say. And so, yeah, through the 20s and the 30s, it just became super popular. Lorimer left, I want to say it was after FDR's third election for president. He was really against Roosevelt, and here he was doing a magazine which by then was national. It was meant to represent American ideals and Americanisms and all that stuff. But the guy he thought would be best for America did not become the president. So he finally decided that he didn't know what was good for America anymore. So that's when he got out. So then we went through a few editors. Fast forward to 1968, and we had a court case. We published a story that basically explained how 2 college football coaches cheated. And even today, nobody's really sure why we didn't end up winning the case. But the lower courts, it was a libel case. The lower courts ruled against us, and then the Fifth Circuit, I think it was, ruled against us, and it went all the way to the Supreme Court. 5-4 decision against the Saturday Evening Post. This was in 1969. And shortly after that, the Post closed down completely in 69. So in the early 70s, probably late 1970, early 1971, Bert Servas, who who is from Indiana, he saw that it was available and closed down, and he bought up all of the commodities of the Saturday Evening Post Society. Actually, then I think it was still Curtis Publishing. Originally, what he really wanted to get was all of our kids' magazines, because the Post had done, or Curtis Publishing had done, like 6 or 7 different kids' magazines. But somewhere along the line, and I think I heard that it was on the Today Show, that somebody who was doing an interview, and somebody said, "Well, I hear you're bringing the Saturday Evening Post back," and his response was something like, "Okay." So he basically turned it over to his wife, and they built it back up starting in 1971. I think it was a quarterly for a couple years, and then they moved to, I mean, if you look back in the history, it wasn't really regular. There were, be 6 one year and 7 issues the next year and 4 issues a year after that. But by the time we get around to, I think it's 2012, when our current CEO took over, we were pretty regular. During the 80s, it was a health magazine, very right wing. We don't pull a lot historically from the 80s magazines to put in the magazines now, but now we're doing 6 issues a year every 2 months, and we've got the online stuff going, and that's where we are now.
What's your circulation currently?
I should know this because I have to put it in there every December. I want to say it's like 400,000.
Okay.
That sounds about right.
Andy, I was curious, what are your responsibilities as the senior managing editor?
Well, the plain old managing editor responsibilities are basically guiding through each piece of the magazine, guiding it through editorial, and making sure that it gets where it needs to go, and we stay on top of everything. I was originally hired on as a copy editor, and so I still do that. So I'm doing the copy editing and fact checking on all the stuff in the magazine. And then, like I said, last month, I've taken on some more responsibilities involving contracts and reaching out to writers like you, and paperwork. Plus, I write a weekly column about word etymologies.
Oh, that sounds interesting.
Yeah, been doing that.
Sounds like fun.
I think I started that in 2018, maybe even earlier. I'm surprised sometimes, because I remember when I did my 100th column, and I did a special like anniversary column about the word 100 and cent, and about all where they come from and all the different words that are connected to it. And then later on, I'm looking back, and it's like, oh, I've already done more than 200 of these. I didn't even notice when the 200th one went past. So it has been a while. It gets harder and harder to find new words to write about, though.
Now, does the Post has a print edition, but do you also have an online component? And if yes, is that also available to freelance contributors?
It is. It is. There's a different editor who does that, but I mean, we're all in the same office. So yeah, a lot of times when I'm looking through basically the slush pile, and I see a pitch that, it's kind of interesting, and maybe it's a little too current or not quite right for the magazine, I'll pass it on to our web editor and see if she's interested in it. And yeah, she has her own budgets and her own workflows and everything.
Let's talk a little bit about your current editorial needs.
Mm-hmm.
What kind of articles is the Post looking for routinely? I mean, what can we give you? Let me put it that way.
Mm-hmm. Well, if you look at the cover of the Post, sort of buried in the logo is the phrase "Celebrating America, Past, Present, and Future." So that narrows the scope down a little bit, right? Basically, what we really want are stories about America and Americans that most Americans don't know. I mean, it could be travel, it could be people, it could be just neat things. And that's basically what generally what we need.
Just so you're looking for the stories that the other publications aren't really aware of. But as you said
Mhm.
about America, so the thing that I did for you on the Apollo moon trees is kind of
Yeah.
a past connection with Apollo 14, but then a current connection with the Artemis project. So
Yeah. Yes. One of the things that we try to do that I think we're pretty good at, because we have 200 years worth of publication that we can go back and dig through. Um, we try to find modern day, I don't want to say problems, topics, but we can look at them from a historical perspective. A lot of time what we see is people will say there's this thing going on in the world and we've never seen anything like it, and we can go back in our archive and say, well, here's where it happened. Here's the pandemic, the Spanish flu pandemic, and then here's the pandemic in the mid 1900s, and this is how everybody reacted. And we have people complaining about wearing masks during the Spanish flu pandemic or things like that. um, but yeah, really our big selling point is our archive, that we can go back and compare modern America to the America of the past and maybe draw some conclusions from that.
Andy, what are you not looking for? What are the kinds of articles that you see routinely that just either you've done to death or just is inappropriate or just not right for the Saturday Evening Post?
Well, the Saturday Evening Post Society is a nonprofit. Um, so we do not want overly political pieces. If we start taking sides in politics, that we risk losing our 501(c) status. Um, we also don't, like you sort of alluded to before, we don't want the stories that the other magazines are already talking about. Um, I always think of the Smithsonian Magazine as the closest thing to us. That might not actually be accurate, but that's what I think of. Um, so, if the Smithsonian Magazine is doing something about, because they're American history as well, if they're doing this great story about something, yeah, it might be a great topic, but they've already done it, so we don't want that. Um, Now, the other thing is the editorial schedule for the magazine itself, the print magazine. We finish it a month before it goes out, which means the stories we get, we want 2 months before it publishes, which means we're not doing cutting edge, late breaking news in the print magazine because it just won't work because it'll be late. But, like I said, we have the online thing. Um, and so, yeah, if there's a great story that's happening now, and, this comes up a lot lately when somebody famous dies, we can go back, oh, look, we did interviews with them in the 50s and 60s. We can republish those. Um, but yeah, we can still do more recent news online, but just not in the print magazine.
Do you use a lot of reprint or older material in current issues? Is there like a percentage of old and new?
Well, not as such. We don't we don't just reprint stuff. I mean, in the back of every magazine, there's a section called the Vault. It's almost nothing but excerpts from stuff from the past. And usually it's, a little something from 50 years ago, a little something from 100 years ago. And our archivist works on that. But more often, what we will do with archival material is it will have a main feature. Um, for instance, there's one about Hawaii that just came out in the August issue about how they are changing how they approach tourism to protect Hawaii and make it more culturally relevant and not just basically give everything over to visitors. Um, and then with that, we've pulled an excerpt or two from, I think it was just one in this one. We had an excerpt about um, Hawaii from the year after Hawaii actually became a state. It was in the magazine, and it was about tourism, that too. So yeah, like I said, it's we give a historical view of a modern issue, and even back then it was 57 or 59, I don't remember. that they're saying that, oh, that Hawaii is a state now, and now it's overrun with tourists, and there's concrete everywhere, and things are getting trampled. So everything old is new again. But that's primarily what we do with the archive. Occasionally, if there, like I said, if there is a modern day story that just it's relevant for this archival piece to go up, it'll go online.
What tend to be the most common mistakes that writers, new contributors tend to make when they pitch? What are they doing wrong? What can we learn from them?
Well, it's going to sound stupid, I hope. They don't read the submission guidelines. This happens more often in fiction than in the regular pitches, but we have a word limit, a 5,000 word limit, upper and lower, 1,000 to 5,000 words, and we get people saying, here's my flash fiction, or here's my 12,000 word short story. Yeah, I don't even have to read that, which is nice because I could get to the slush pile fast. And we get people, it says in our submission guidelines, we do not publish poetry, but people still send us their poems, which, they're all filled with hope and happiness and creativity, but they're actually just wasting my time. But I think if you're going to pitch, the primary thing to remember is that your pitch is going to be our first exposure to your writing. So make sure the pitch itself is well written. We want to see, some writing samples. If it's a good pitch, we'll want to go see some writing samples to make sure, you know how to write, because we do get a lot of people who start their pitches and their submissions with, I'm a retired so-and-so who had decided to try writing this summer. So here's what I'm going to do. And they're usually not very good, with few exceptions, because they haven't put in the time. It just takes time and practice. Other mistakes that people make.
Well, I think not reading the guidelines is very significant. And I'm sure every editor of every magazine probably would say the same thing. Now, the guidelines are available on the Post website, right?
Yeah. If you go to the bottom of any page online, there's submission guidelines. There's a link right there in the footer.
And how do you like to be pitched, Andy? What's the best way for us to catch your eye? I'm not even there yet, really. I'm just looking for a good story. One thing, when you write your pitch, I'm more interested in what you want to write about than you. So if you're going to include your bona fides, don't start with that, because it makes you look like you've got a big head. Look what I've done. Now here's what I can do for you. That's not how it works. But really, if you just if you have got a good idea and show that you know how to write it, and show me in your pitch that you have a good angle, that's another important one, because we get, pitches for, I want to do an article about Eleanor Roosevelt, and that's basically all they give me. Yeah, everybody knows her, but what are you going to say about her? What angle are you going to take? And it's something like, if Donna, you would come to me and say, I want to do an article about Apollo 14 and some of the weird things that they did. That would have been, we need more. But you came with, I want to talk about, it was 14, right? Yes.
I want to talk about these seeds that they took on Apollo 14, and they're doing it again with Artemis. That was a good angle, because you've got the past and you've got the present, something people don't know about. I had no idea about it. I like to think I'm pretty well up on American history, although I just found out today that Mariska Hargitay, from CVU, her mother's Jane Mansfield.
Mm-hmm.
I didn't know that. And her dad was Hercules.
Yep.
Mr. Universe, 1955 was her dad. I didn't know that. I was really surprised by that. Anyway, Jane Mansfield shows up in our September issue.
Is email the best way for us to reach you? Is that your preferred?
Oh yeah, I hate talking on the phone. I absolutely hate talking on the phone. That's genetic.
So email is the best way to hit
Yes,
you.
yes.
Let's talk a little bit more. You mentioned that you publish fiction. You don't publish poetry.
Mhm.
What do you look for? And you said a 5,000 word length max on the fiction,
Yeah.
right? What do you look for in a work of fiction? What kind of stories does the Post publish?
Okay, I'll tell you, my editor-in-chief and I have slightly differing opinions. I've realized this recently. Um, Now we do have some guidelines in our submissions, our submission guidelines about what kind of stories we like, and some of the writers that we've published before that would still be publishable today. So that can give you some idea. What I think our readers want, because our readers are just normal people. They're not literary critics. They're not college, haven't gone to college to be educated about literature. They just want a good story. So one of the things I look for is basically an old-fashioned story arc, beginning, middle, end, climax, denouement, that sort of thing. A nice little package that somebody can, read the story and say, "Oh, I'm glad I did that." Which doesn't mean I'm blocking out some of the more modern kind of things. Any story that's well written, I'll be interested in.
Does
Um,
genre matter? Or there's any genres you don't publish, like science
um,
fiction, anything like that?
well, just the kind that you would probably expect. We don't do fan fiction. We don't do. I don't want to say we don't do romance. We don't do hot and heavy kind of romance. But if it's a romance-based story and it's a good story, we can publish that. We've even done horror, but not gore. We'll do science fiction, but probably not the super heavy stuff that's going to bog readers down. Um, but again, if it's really well written, you can't pass something up like that up.
Who are some of the big names that the Post has published over the years?
Oh gosh, everybody but Hemingway.
Really?
Yeah, F. Scott Fitzgerald, Agatha Christie, Kurt Vonnegut, Annie Tyler. Hold on, I think I got a list here.
But you rejected Hemingway.
I don't think he ever. I don't know if he ever submitted a story. I'm gonna have to ask Jeff, our archivist, about that to see if he knows. He did end up on the cover of one of our magazines after he was famous. But yeah, Hemingway just never showed up in fiction. Of course, F. Scott Fitzgerald is the one that we're most known for. He wouldn't exist as a name in literature if it hadn't been for the Post. I mean, The Great Gatsby, his short stories in the Post are how he developed The Great Gatsby. In fact, there's an old book called The Gatsby Girls that the Post published, I don't know, 10 years ago before I started working here. Let me get the list because it is really kind of impressive. No gratuitous sex, that's on the list. Some of these things that I just remembering that I have written here. We prefer stories with a classic arc, conflict, climax, and resolution. That's just a guideline. No fan fiction, flash fiction, or poetry. Yeah, that's really just about it. Anyway, but I backtracked another word or another question. Oh, here we go. Faulkner, Ray Bradbury, of course, I forgot him. Louis L'Amour, Sinclair Lewis, Jack London, Joyce Carol Oates, Edgar Allan Poe. Even we published The Black Cat in the Saturday Evening Post back in 18 something something. Kurt Vonnegut, I mentioned, and a lot of others.
That's a heck of a lineup. That's a heck of a lineup. It really
is. We have an old card catalogs at the office that go back from, it's like 1906 to 1968, 69. Back before computers, and some old papers. So I can go up and find a list of all of like Faulkner stories that we published in the Post, and if I really want to dig, I could probably find old papers with their old contracts with their signatures on them, which is really kind of neat, just to touch that little bit of literary history.
Yeah, for sure. Andy, let me ask you, how much does the Post pay for articles and for fiction, and what rights do you buy?
So I can speak easily about New Fiction Friday. We underpay. We pay $25 for New Fiction Friday, and we ask for exclusivity for 6 months. And that's about it. That's it. I mean, there's general legal language in there that basically covers us up to put your story up and leave it there on our website forever. For the magazine, we usually pay, I want to say it's around $800 for our fiction, and we do one short story in every issue. Our January issue is reserved for the winner of our annual Great American Fiction Contest, which has $1,000 prize. So that's basically 5 short stories a year that are open for others in the magazine. And those, the rights that we buy, they're pretty much negotiable. What we'll start with is the right to print it in a magazine, or the right to put it online, and probably exclusivity for 6 months or a year, something like that.
And what's the fee for the nonfiction, the regular article stuff?
It really depends on the size and the topic. I'm trying to remember what we paid you.
I can tell you.
Our new editor-in-chief has been pushing for to pay our writers better. Not that we've been paying them badly, but to get more money out there for our writers. And I think the low point now is like $450, $500, but it's usually around 7 or 8. And then sometimes, depending on topic, we might cover some expenses. And then, and a lot of it is negotiable, just like anything else. It's a contract. So,
okay, very good. Can you tell us a couple of recent articles that to you really typify the Saturday Evening Post, that they are perfect Saturday Evening Post kinds of articles?
Gosh, they do all run together after a while. Well, we have often, and I'm going to take you on the road here. We will designate a particular story as a post perspective, and that's where we really drive home the idea of, here's a modern subject, here's our take on it today, and here's our take on it from the past. So it's a new article and then something from the archive. And yeah, recent is the thing that's really getting me right now, because like I said, they all run together. Oh gosh, what have we done recently? Okay, here's one. Oh, here's one I really liked. And hopefully it's not just it's because it's the first of my authors that I found and contracted. But we did a story, it's called Vala Simpson's Moving Art. What issue is this? March, April of this year. And I got her last summer. But it's about basically this old guy in West Virginia, no, Maryland, one or the other, who he started just building whirligigs when he was like 70, 72, something like that. Started building these little whirligigs, and they got larger and larger and larger, and just he would go get scraps. So now there is an entire whirligig park devoted to him. And some of these things are like 40 feet tall and 60 feet wide, and they all spin and they have mechanical movements. And it's just this great little piece about, this guy you've probably never heard of. He was a veteran of World War II. And now you can, actually go see some of his pieces in this park.
We have a big whirligig thing here in North Carolina too. It's like just this big park, and it's just filled with whirligigs.
Oh, well, that might actually be it.
Could it be us? I
It's
wouldn't be
in
surprised.
Wilson.
Say what?
It's in Wilson.
Yes, that is it. It's
Oh,
the one in
cool.
Wilson. His name is Wallace Simpson, or was.
That's
He died
it.
a few years ago.
I've been there.
I'm looking for our current issue. I do not keep a clean office. I can tell you that. Oh, one of my favorites in recent memory, I almost forgot about. So Bill Newcott, who usually does our movie reviews online, he did a story that we called America's Music Road, where he drove from Alabama, Muscle Shoals, Alabama, up to Nashville, and just through a whole bunch of big, like, musical pilgrimage sites. And there's just a whole bunch of them on a 300-mile stretch of road. And so he wrote about stopping at in like the Ryman Theater, and there's like a Museum of Funk, and Tina Turner's hometown, and all these little places that you could, if you're really into American music, that you could visit. So it was a bunch of little pieces like that. And then with these, he included short playlists. So like you go to, for Muscle Shoals, you know, you got, well, Leonard Skinner's on the list because Muscle Shoals is mentioned in Freebird, Sweet Home Alabama. And there's the Staples Singers and Etta James and Paul Simon. They all recorded at this one studio that he talks about. And then sort of in between these, we have old pieces from our archive about some of the big names. So we've got a little piece about Chet Atkins, one about Isaac Hayes and David Porter, which is kind of weird. The story in the story, he visited this place in Memphis, and as he was coming out, this guy came over. You come here. He says, I just thought you might want to shake my hand. I guess he heard what he was doing. I thought you might want to shake my hand. He's like, okay. So he shook his hand, and he says, you don't know who I am, do you? And he says, no. He says, my name's David Porter. And I'm in the Rock and Roll Hall of Fame and these others. And so he walks away, and immediately he's on his phone looking up David Porter. And sure enough, he's got like 131 Grammys or something ridiculous like that. He's mostly known as a songwriter, but he's written songs for all the big names out of Nashville. But yeah, I think that really is a great piece that exemplifies the Post. I mean, we've got a modern take on going back and looking at the music's past.
And also just pure Americana.
Pure Americana, and the pictures are great too. That's always a bonus.
One article that I really enjoyed, Andy, and I think it may have been the last October issue, was all about TV horror hosts.
Okay,
I'm a monster kid. I love that article. And I'm reading this and I'm thinking, I wish to heck I'd written that.
I think that was Bill Newcott again.
Yep, that was awesome. I really liked it.
Yeah, that was a fun one to do. We had a lot of fun, at least I did, in our 2021, our bicentennial, because all year we had themed magazines. It was a lot of stuff from the archive, so it was cheaper to produce, first of all, so we could put more pages in. But like one of them was, my favorite one was fiction. So we had basically excerpts from a whole lot of the fiction that we published over the last 100 years. And another one was, I think we did a sports, one about covers, I think. But it was just really neat because for that year, we really just dug into the archive and pulled up some of our greatest hits all year long.
Are the archives available to the public, or is it behind a wall?
It is, right now it's behind a paywall. Any subscriber to the magazine can get past the paywall, and it's $15 a year. Unless you wait till Christmas, then it's like $12.
Save those $3. It's worth it.
And actually, if you are really interested, you might want to wait till Christmas, because we are upgrading the service that we use. So it is, right now it's basically on a server somewhere, and that you have to access the server. And the whole thing is eventually going to be in the cloud. And then I'm really looking forward to it, because that's when we're going to start being able to offer like universities access to all students.
Yeah.
And that sort of thing. It'll really open us up to a larger audience, theoretically.
tell us a little bit about your personal writing. We talked about this briefly before the meeting started. So you said that you kind of, the first thing you ever did was sell a short story to the Post, and then you came to work for it a few months later. What kind of extracurricular writing do you do?
Well, that was the first fiction I ever sold. I used to write, I don't remember when it started, but I am really interested in word and language history. Of course, copy editing subjects. So for a long time, I was writing for copyediting.com, which was owned by a group of professional copy editors. They were actually, the website was eventually bought by the American Copy Editors Society. A lot of my stuff was on them. But it was about editorial subjects. It was about rather copy editing, grammatical and spelling subjects, word histories, and I also really like doing word games that you can do at home. As far as fiction, people always ask me that. I'm not really a genre writer. I do end up leaning towards science fiction a lot, but that's mostly by accident. That's just where I end up. And I've been writing music too, but doing some piano arranging.
Oh, cool.
Yeah.
You were mentioning the copy editor organization. I forgot to tell you, Laura Poole sends her regards.
Oh, good.
She's been a good friend of TAF for many, many years. And my wife and I socialize with her and her husband often. So when I told her that I'd landed my first article with you and that my editor was you, and she's like, Andy? I was like, yeah, tell him I said hi.
Yeah, she's good people.
Yeah, I love her to death. Any concluding thoughts, Andy, on writing for the Post, pitching for the Post? Anything that freelance writers should know that would help them with this endeavor?
I got to tell you to be patient because we're not large and we get a large number of submissions. I wrote down some notes earlier. Let me make sure I didn't miss anything. And pitches should go to editors@SaturdayEveningPost.com.
Editors@SaturdayEveningPost.com.
Editors, plural. I didn't mention this earlier. So I always think it goes without saying, but I'm often wrong about these things. But the Post's readership is generally older. And by older, I think the last time we looked at the metrics, our average reader was like 73. So keep that in mind when you're thinking of topics. But we are trying to appeal to a younger audience, obviously, because our older readership is going to be gone eventually. So we have to get new readers. And when I say younger, I mean like Gen X, my generation, and maybe older millennials. Our readership. And so we don't publish a whole lot of 4-letter words. We still kind of try to be family friendly. We don't get into some of those topics that might be a little more risque. Again, especially if they've got a political bent, we just generally try to avoid, because there's so much other stuff that we can write about. We don't even need to go there. There are plenty of places doing that. I think that's about it, unless anybody else has a question.
Yes, let's open this up. Does anyone have any questions for Andy? Sue?
Well, you just kind of answered it, but I'll ask it anyway. I've written a short story, and it involves fentanyl addiction. Is that too edgy for you?
No, not particularly. If
it involves a family. You said family, right?
Oh yeah, no, that'll be fine. It's especially in fiction. There's a lot more possibilities open in fiction. Right there, we're just looking for a good story, and especially meaningful story. If it tells something meaningful.
Well, it's certainly relevant these days.
Yeah.
That's for sure. Joel, did you have Joel, you're muted.
Yeah, okay.
There you go.
Just as a matter of groveling, I collect PDFs of out of print books, and one of them I just got today, A Glossary of Obscure Words Used in Shakespeare, printed in 1887.
Huh.
I'll be glad to email you a copy.
Oh, sure. I
And
would.
the other thing is, you mentioned things that in the past and in the present, and by blind dumb luck, that's exactly what I write about. Roughly 85 articles so far. For instance, the first anti-drag laws were about women in pants. They were going to start smoking cigars and on the boat. And what's even really weirder is these are not pants that we would even describe as pants, and they're worn with a skirt over them.
Oh,
But it
yeah.
was why it was the first anti-drag laws. And stop me if you've heard this before. A right-wing, anti-immigrant, part cult, part political party hires some street thugs to break up an election in DC that they think the liberals will win. They do so. The DC police are overwhelmed. The federal troops are called in. And after it's all over, 10 people are dead. Congress wants an investigation. And many of the members of Congress said, no. These street thugs, they were tourists who were caught up in a federal plot. Now, that's when the Know Nothing Party hired the Plug Uglies to break up an election in DC in 1857.
Wow.
Yeah.
The same, it's stuff like that. So I guess I will pitch you some of those things.
Yeah.
I got a bunch of them.
Especially something like that, we could probably go back and find our reporting or somebody's reporting. From
Yeah.
Well, what I do is I actually go to the Library of Congress and I write most of the article by taking the clippings of the time. Because what people thought at the time is generally different from what historians will stereotype it as.
Yeah.
For instance, slavery existed in the North and the Jim Crow laws come from there, not from the South. All kinds of stuff. Just, like I said, 80-something articles on it. I just keep plowing away through the Library of Congress, which is kind of your taxpayer-free time machine.
Oh, yeah.
Yeah. Does anyone else have anything for Andy? Nobody?
Well,
Andy,
I was going to ask,
you.
how do I send you that PDF?
Oh, my address is a.hollandbeck, which I hope you can see on your screen, at it's satepost.org. We have both a com and an org, and it gets confusing, and I don't know who gets which email address. But
Okay.
I got satepost.org.
Okay.
Andy,
Thanks.
thank you so much for joining us this evening. This was wonderful. You just really pulled the curtain back for us, and we really appreciate it. Hopefully, a lot of our members will be sending you some really interesting proposals.
Okay. Yeah. And when you do, put in the email that you were in this meeting, because I won't recognize your names for sure.
just say a member of TAF.
There you go. That'll work.
Okay.
Andy, you're welcome to hang with us for a few more minutes if you wish. This is a part of our monthly meeting where we share the good news. Hopefully people have made some sales and whatnot. And who has some to share with us?
I need some good news.
I wanted to ask a question, but
Oh, yeah, Toby.
I couldn't see the raise your hand. I just did clapping hands, which I also meant to do, but not yet. But I wanted to ask what your rate of acceptance is for fiction. Like you said that you get a lot of submissions, but do you know, is it like 1 or 2%?
I've never done the math on it, but we publish 52 stories online. That includes all the stories that were in the magazine, right? One of those is the fiction winner. 5 of those is the fiction contest, or the fiction contest runners up. So 6, 7. So that's like 10 of them right there. So basically we have about 42 slots to put fiction in online, and we get probably 6 submissions a day.
Okay.
Just fiction submissions.
Just fiction.
And if you're a new, like pretty much unpublished person, do you only submit to the New Fiction Friday?
Well, everything goes through the same place.
Oh,
You don't have to submit, yeah, you don't submit separately for online versus the magazine. If we
Mhm.
find a great story in the slush pile for the magazine, we can buy it. So
okay. And then for topics, you mentioned no 4-letter words and nothing really risque, but a little risque is okay. Is some
yeah,
like killing okay?
yeah, people die in our stories. I
Okay.
didn't say no 4-letter words. We've loosened it up a little bit. But I mean, it does need to serve the story. We're probably not going to buy a story about a guy fighting Tourette's. That's not for us. But occasionally, you know, a well-placed exclamation is a well-placed exclamation. So we're not going to pull that out.
Okay. And then I have a story about a nun who gets visited and the devil tries to, take her over. Is that too religious? And, is there a line there?
I mean, unless the point of your story is that Catholicism is a horrible thing that should be demolished, or that sort of thing. No, that's fine.
Okay. And then
In
one
fact,
last one.
send that before October rolls around, because I'm going to be looking for Halloween stories.
Okay. Okay. And my last one is you mentioned the age of your readership. I have one about a 96, I think he's 96-year-old man who gets turned into a vampire, and he's really pissed because he's got all these health issues and he does not want to live forever. So that's the story. But will that be offensive or anything?
I would want to
Oh, no,
read
no.
that story.
Yeah, especially online. Our online readership is younger because it's online.
Okay.
And yeah, I don't really worry about people getting offended too much by fiction, unless there's, I mean, we'll avoid blatantly targeting a particular audience for anything bad. There's so many ways that sentence could go. But yeah, I mean, that that does sound like an interesting story. Gosh, I just read, what was it called? Vampires in the Lemon Grove. That sounds like it's kind of along the same line. It's about these old vampires that live in Florida, and at some point they realize they don't actually need to drink blood, but fresh lemon juice will do it. And there's just the whole psychological thing. So the guy's like, I don't want to do this, and the woman is like, well, I'm going to go be a bat. It's
That sounds good. Well, thank you so much. I appreciate
Sure.
that.
Does
yeah, I
anyone
want to hear
else-
some good news. I need some.
Yeah. Well, I reported that I've got my piece in the July-August issue of Saturday Evening Post about the moon trees, and my article about comic books as literature in the July-August issue of Writer's Digest. So I'm very excited about both of those, and still doing some stuff for Encyclopedia Britannica and whatnot. Although I found out today that the editor I've been working with, who actually was involved in bringing me into the organization many years ago, is leaving. So I'm going to have to work with a new editor again. So that's always challenging. But anybody else have anything to share? Sarah?
Yeah.
Yeah, so as most of you know, from the last call, I now have a blog on Psychology Today, and I'm super excited about that. I've published 3 blogs. 2 of them have been republishes from NAMI, and one of them has been brand new, but one of them that was published by NAMI, but they did a lot of rewriting for me. I republished that post as I originally wrote it to Psychology Today, which they prefer to have something that's not exactly like it is somewhere else anyway. But I received a special email from the editors of Psychology Today applauding me for that article, and that they're going to list it as an essential read in psychopharmacology, and that they look forward to seeing what else I have to write. And so that was really awesome. And it was also really affirmative that, because I did feel like NAMI kind of broke up the flow of my writing through editing things so much. And I really did think that my version was just as good. And so to see that my own writing is, people really like it, that really meant a lot. It was great to get that kind of positive feedback on my writing.
That's terrific, Sarah. Congratulations. And I'm not surprised at all.
Oh, thanks.
That's wonderful.
Thank you.
Nancy?
I don't know if I had told anybody because I fell and broke everything the week after this book came out. This is my 45th novel. It's a historical fiction, part of a series, and it's doing really well.
Awesome.
All right.
What's the title? Give us the title.
The Rogue's Ring. It follows the Earl's treasure and the Duke's diamond. It's all about a treasure hunt.
45th?
45th.
Nice.
Oh, that's good.
Been busy, but
That's
now I
awesome.
can't type, so
But you can sell.
my books are on hold. So it's all right.
Anyone else?
reading.
Yeah.
I can read.
Yeah,
All right.
Can we only share positive news?
No, I can share any kind of news.
Well, I
You're gonna
entered my
depress
novel.
Andy.
I entered my novel Into the Kiss of Death, romantic suspense. It's not romance, but people who read it said, you might want to try this. And you get 3 judges, and one of them loved it. And one of them said, yeah, it's okay, but you need to work on this. The third one said, you should have written it this way. And I was a judge myself, so I knew who was, organizing. I said, you might want to look at this review. But it really pulled back the curtain on, when you get commentary back like that, you can really oh, that's what's going on.
Yeah. Well, Nan
mean-
is reading 50 books for Writer's Digest.
Yeah,
for
I'm
their
doing
thing.
100.
You've done that too. And this is her first time, and she is finding this a freaking roller coaster of a ride.
Yeah.
She's found
Mhm.
a couple that were like spectacular and a lot that are not spectacular.
I'm doing
they make
picture books this year.
Break every rule you can think of in the very first paragraph, and it's very frustrating.
Well, some of the content of the ones I did last year, I did the adult last year, but I'm having a lot more fun with picture books. If she just wants to
Oh
take
man,
do
she's
25.
doing genre stuff, and like
Yeah.
I said, a couple of the books have been really, should be professionally published, excellently written. A
Yeah.
lot of them though are just people who, was it Truman Capote said that's not writing, it's typing. Into that category. It's an experience for her.
Oh,
Does
yeah.
anyone else have anything?
I just got a question.
Yeah.
This afternoon, I sent a copy of an article out of Publisher's Lunch, and I sent it to the TAF group. I hadn't seen it show up. Is there?
I don't think
there-
I saw that. You
I mean,
try resending it, Joel, but I
Okay.
don't think that came through. I don't remember seeing that.
Yeah. 'Cause
Yeah,
I
try it
did-
again. Let's see. And if you
Okay.
continue to have issues, let me know and I'll see what I can do.
Okay. It was very interesting that evidently USA Today has restarted their
I saw that
bestseller
article.
lists.
I saw that email.
Yeah.
You saw
Oh,
it?
yeah. I did see that. It did come
Yeah.
through, Joel.
Okay.
Yeah.
It just doesn't come back to me, I guess.
Yeah. No, I saw it. I think everyone
Okay.
else did
I
too.
saw it. Yeah.
All right.
Toby, why did you have a bird flying around before the meeting started? You leaving your windows open again?
The question should be why weren't there 3? Because I have 3 and they get going. But, no, they're pets. They have no, see my t-shirt is the origin of birds from T-Rex.
There you go.
Yeah. So I've got dinosaurs in my house.
I love that. So does anyone else have anything to talk about? Any questions for Andy? All right, I think we're good to go. Hey, Ron,
Right.
Great.
Ron. I think Ron's
Awesome.
asleep. Somebody wake up Ron.
I hope he's not running his air conditioner and CO2 guy. There he is.
There you
Yay,
go.
Ron. Yay, you woke
We
up.
thought we lost you, Ron.
Ron, wake up.
All right, everyone. Andy, thank you again so much for joining us this evening. This was
Oh, no.
wonderful and a lot of fun, and we really, really appreciate it. And
Thanks for having me.
so, yeah, this is great. And thank everyone for everything. I really appreciate you sharing your good news with everyone.
Yeah.
So next month, same bat time, same bat channel. Our guest of honor is going to be the editor of Walter Magazine. So that's going to be interesting. It's a local publication. And we've got some other TAF talks and things that are brewing, and I'll make some announcements as soon as things are finalized. So I hope everyone has a great evening. I hope you have a great week, and I'll see you next month.
Right.
Take care.